G'day legends, I hope that you are having a fantastic day. Now, if you Google or Twitter or Instagram search Israel today, there is one particular story that has absolutely taken the online world by storm. And this is a police counterterrorism unit from the internal security forces known as Shin Bet has raided a hospital targeting 3 men. Now, we're going to go over, I guess, all of this as a whole and see where does the law lie? What do I think of this? For those who are unaware, I served in the military, and there's a few things instantly in this video that I was like, that seems sus. And I sent it to some of my friends who have worked in specifically counterterrorism units, and they had the exact same thoughts. So I think the first thing that we need to point out is that this occurred in Jenin in the West Bank, not in Gaza. And there's a few reasons why this is important, but let's actually have a look where this is. So of course, this is Israel here. This is Gaza, where we mainly speak about. You'll be familiar with Sderot, Jabalia, areas like this. And then this in here, between this dotted line and here, of course, depending on the map, this looks very different of what is occupied areas, what people will say is not. Of course, this is a bit of a mess of a map in here, depending where you're looking. But for all intents and purposes of this, West Bank, and this is Jenin up here. This is where this hospital is, where this then all took place. So the IDF has said that it was targeting 3 men hiding in hospitals and using them as a base for planning terrorist activities and carrying out terror attacks. And they're using hospitals as shelters and human shields. And we've seen many, many claims of this before, with evidence that this has been happening as well down in Gaza. Now, are other terrorist organizations present in the West Bank? Yes, as they are present down in Gaza. So let's actually have a look over this video and have a talk about some things that I saw straight off the bat. So this is the footage here, this hospital, and these guys running in with M4 weapons running through here. Well, at least a platform, an AR platform here. And as we can see, in somewhat disguise. My favorite guy here is the guy with the combat wheelchair, because it just doesn't like drop it. I'm like, I don't know why you'd continue carrying that, but let's just have a look over the footage as a whole. And here we can see someone in scrubs. At the very beginning, we saw someone in a white, like doctor's, professor, scientist style jacket. And you can also hear in this as well some talking. A lot of the talking that you'll hear is actually from the guys then filming the TV that is then the security cameras, but you can hear these special forces. Well, we're going to talk about that, but these operatives here as well who've done this. Now let's see, they push this guy up against here, the guy back with his wheelchair. And then we tilt on the side. We see more of the same. The only camera view we get is of this. This bloke returns then with the wheelchair. Now, when I first saw this, and this guy then with the baby carrier here, and we can see that there are males, females, or at least males posing as females here, but I do think for some of the height difference, some of what we can see, I do believe there are females involved in this as well. Now, as soon as I saw this footage, and it went around some of the groups that I'm part of in some closed groups, and I sent it to some friends of like, what do you think of this? The first thing everyone questioned was actually the authenticity of this video. That people saying this just doesn't seem right. And this is just a screenshot of one of my messages of someone who will stay anonymous, who has to stay anonymous for this, about what he saw. This looks like a Hollywood set, supposed to be Israeli commandos. I read the commandos raided a plot with suppressed weapons dressed as doctors and nurses. I'm not seeing that in the video. I asked, what are you seeing? Disguised? Maybe. They don't move like commandos. No CQB tactics. Really, more of a rabble. Definitely no suppressors. And this is the very first thing I noticed here from this footage. The commandos meant to be an elite unit. Now, we don't know because we don't have much other footage of what's going on here. We've got one hallway corner. Maybe they're on the way out. Maybe they're on the way in. We don't exactly know where this actually is, but we were told that this was some super slick 10-minute mission starting at 05:30, ending at 05:40, I believe. I'm looking at my notes, but I must have deleted that part. I'll correct it here. But these are definitely in no realm slick CQB tactics at all. Looks very sloppy. Some of the stepping here. If you've handled weapons, you've done any CQB, there are some things in this that instantly you go, huh, like that just seems a little bit off. Now, there are, these front weapons, definitely no suppressors here as well that you see with, if it's a special forces team, again, unlikely, not impossible, unlikely to have a female operative there. Though, where some other friends of mine pointed to was, well, maybe this isn't a special forces team. This is more or likely to be a team from an intelligence agency that would, give way to having female operatives who are, all throughout that world, as well as having less slick CQB drills, close quarter battle drills. So that points to that. Maybe it's not some elite counter-terrorism, slick, kick in the door fucking dudes, that it's more an intel team. So that is, one of, if you question the authenticity, that is there. And I hadn't actually thought of that till I asked some other guys. But maybe one suppressor on second watch, but one suppressor, everyone's saying that it is fully suppressed. And it looks like media students trying to stage a propaganda film. Doesn't look smooth at all. And 100% questioned this until I actually saw that this was the police minister shared this video. The Israeli Defense Police Minister, congratulations, and strengthens the Israeli Defense Force for their heroic activity last night in cooperation with the IDF and Shin Bet forces in the Jenin refugee camp, which led to the elimination of 3 terrorists. Let all our enemies know that our forces will operate everywhere and by all means to protect the citizens of the state of Israel. So right there, this is authentic footage. I believe that's as much confirmed as you can really get in this. But let's then go back to the footage, as there are a few more interesting things. You're running AR-style weapons chambered in 5.56. That as well, for a CQB thing, this already brings up some red flags. I'm not saying that you wouldn't have that, but the penetration of that round is significantly more than something you may have out of a smaller gun. So out of something like, people will be familiar with like MP5, MP7, but of course Israelis use then things like the Uzi, and they have a whole other suite of weapons as well that will have less punch through. And the reason you want this in a CQB environment is, well, you're shooting, how many bloody walls can you go through, or even through people? So there's definitely that part of it as well. So the weapons choice here, and then I actually found some footage of about a decade ago in the West Bank of another raid on a hospital here. And as you'll see again, dressed in disguise. So here we go. But here we see 9mm pistol. And to me, this is an AR platform, but there is a real reason why I should say pistol, maybe not an AR, but there is good reason for having pistol instead of long rifles. So I thought that was very interesting to look at. And you can see then plain clothes again in here. And if you're going in disguise, weapons being hidden, I don't know exactly why you'd then use these long rifles as well. That's just something that I looked at and saw straight off the bat. As well, we're going to then talk about the disguises. Now, there is a reason, I guess, for the wheelchair. Maybe you're taking it in. If you're taking someone out of who you've arrested, well, then that may explain that, and it fits into this environment. And the reason why they had to go in disguise here is the West Bank is not as under siege, of course, as Gaza. That just people aren't going to be as used to seeing soldiers getting around like this. So therefore, you're in disguise. But we can go that the video is most likely authentic, or for me, beyond reasonable doubt that it is actually authentic. Now, most people are pointing at the legalities of what has actually happened here. And I have sort of different thoughts about this as a former soldier and then as an observer. I've had different reactions to this. My initial reaction was, you're disguised as medical staff in a hospital, allegedly then in the hospital. This is not good. And that's where most media around the world is painting it. You need to remember that these special operations, these intelligence services, they do unconventional warfare. And then I had a little bit more of a think over, the last few hours about, well, what actually constitutes disguised as medical staff? Where does the law actually sit on this? And it's a hard one, because with everything like this, where actually is that line in the sand? Disguise is very, very hard. Now let's look at some disguises. These are Delta Force in Afghanistan. You could claim this as a disguise of blending in. And then we have a disguise of someone trying to be a leader of a nation. And then we'll have maybe the most famous disguises here of this bloke, I'm sure you are all very aware of. But what people are saying is you're disguised as medical staff, therefore the law has been broken. And let's watch the footage again. Now, I think this is tough. I think there is a line, and I don't know if it's gone over it. Yes, we have on like a white scientist's coat here, and then we have plain clothes, and we have a guy here in scrubs. Now, is this enough to say that it is disguised as medical staff in a hospital for the purpose of blending in, espionage, whatever? I'm not willing to draw the line on that, but I don't know if this would be enough to go across the line of that you're impersonating doctors or nurses. I don't know if there's enough evidence in this to say that. One person in scrubs, one person in a white coat. Would be very different if you're all in that outfit and you had red crosses on things like this. That would be different. But this, I think there's a bit of a long bow being drawn, but I can see that this is not a good look for parts as well. This is the main screenshot that people are sharing here. I think this guy may be in scrubs as well with the wheelchair, and this bloke in the overcoat, and then the bag here, I'm guessing maybe a medical bag slung, which can fit in with actually just doing that operation. And disguising as medical staff for the purpose of espionage or other illicit activities is generally considered a violation of the principles of the Geneva Convention. But of course, the Geneva Convention gets very murky when one side does not see to any conventions at all. And that's what we saw on the October 7th attacks, and since then with hostages and other operations that have been taken place. Now, they did eliminate 3 people in this. There are differing reports about exactly what happened, from reaching for weapons to no shots fired, and we're going to go over a little bit of this. But the 3 that had been eliminated in this definitely do meet the criteria that is needed for targeting of members of organized armed groups. So we have this bloke here, this bloke here, and of course this bloke here. Now, this bloke here is Mohammed Jamana. Now, he was the spokesman for the Hamas in Jenin. Now, it is said by IDF intelligence that he planned to carry out a terror attack in the immediate future and used the hospital as a hiding place, and therefore was neutralized. So the targeting of these 3 guys is legitimate targets. That said, things change greatly of were they there being recovered from wounds, therefore they may not be legitimate targets at that point. If they reach for a weapon, then yes, it is very, very difficult. And there are photos going around going, well, it does look like early in the morning that these guys were just shot in bed. And that is how it is being reported from Palestinian media as well. That said, we know with recent things, the media, even the UN, there are definitely discrepancies in how that reporting may move forward. So another bit in this too is that the hospital can lose its rights when it is harboring terrorists or harboring these actions. The Geneva Convention clearly states that hospitals can't be a target, but at the same time, these hospitals, they can't be used as a place for attack or weaponized at all. And we have seen this occur throughout Gaza. And the claims are that this was going to happen inside here as well, with these men being held there. And the IDF's Chief of General Staff, Jose Halevi, has claimed that the men targeted were involved in a terrorist planning of a serious attack on Israeli civilians, and said that the force would not allow hospitals to become a cover for terrorism. We do not want to turn hospitals into battlefields, but we are even more determined not to allow hospitals in Gaza, Judea, Samaria, Lebanon, above ground, or in tunnel shafts and tunnels under hospitals to become a place that is a cover for terrorism, and one that allows terrorists to stash weapons, to rest, and to go out to carry out an attack. This is why hospitals are the perfect place to launch an attack like that if you are a terrorist. Hospitals should never be a target. They should be a complete place of neutrality, non-combatant, completely. But for those reasons, that's why if you're a terrorist cell, that these are so great to then have your launch of your attacks out of there, because it is protecting you from attack. And especially if then when Israel do something like this, or the bombings that we have seen, then of course then it spurs up that more propaganda as well. But that said, we don't have all the details on what's going on. And I will say that the photographs of where these guys have been shot does look like they were then sleeping in their beds. So it's a very hard line of where this actually comes. The Palestinian Health Ministry said on Tuesday that Israeli forces opened fire inside the wards of the Ibn Sina hospital in the town of Jenin. The ministry condemned the raid and called on the international community to pressure Israel's military to halt such operations in hospitals. A hospital spokesman said that there were no exchange of fire, indicating that it was a targeted killing. And we know that it definitely was targeting there to go in, get those guys, and go back out. Now, initially, definitely question the authenticity. If those are the drills that this unit is running with, holy shit. Now, it's questionable some of what is actually going on there. And that's why I instantly thought this is just a fake. And like my friend said, thought it was just out of a bloody propaganda film. But let me know what you think of this whole situation. Is what the Israelis were dressed in, is that enough disguise to be considered as trying to impersonate doctors, nurses, medical staff? I don't know. I actually don't think that it is. Initially when I saw it, I'm like, whoa. Looking it back, I'm like, does a white coat and scrubs, is that impersonating? Would you need then IDs? Would you need to be working in the hospital? I don't know. Would you need Red Crosses? Are you rocking up in an ambulance? I think that's where the line would be. I don't know if that fits that criteria. Those three, they were definitely targets, but they can become untargetable when they're wounded, things like this in hospital. Also, what is the benefit of slotting them over, then arrest them, taking them back when we know you've got a hostage problem in Gaza? And of course, how does this actually fall out for Israel on the wider stage? We know a heap of people are already against Israel. You've got this, you're feeding that propaganda information machine worldwide as well, where we know support for Israel is dropping like a lead balloon. It has given a hell of a lot more power and ammunition to those questioning Israel's morality in this conflict. But let me know, because I will be very interested. So thank you guys very much. If you'd like to support my work, please consider the links below. But otherwise, have a great day, and then I'll speak to you tomorrow. Cheers. Bye-bye.